Okay, that's started.
Okay.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Primary Intelligence and our webinar, Who Benefits from Win-Loss Research. My name is Barry Doctor, and I am here today with our two speakers, Ken Allred, founder and CEO of Primary Intelligence, and Steve Johnson, Chief Marketing Officer of Primary Intelligence. And they'll be talking today about who within your organization can and should benefit from your win-loss analysis program. Follow along on our slides here. We're also going to record this presentation, so if you have colleagues that would like to come back and view it later, or if you missed part of it, you can come back and take a look at it again. You'll notice on your GoToMeeting panel display, there's a chat function. Please feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation. We want to keep Ken and Steve hopping and getting answers to the questions that you're asking. They have a robust presentation planned, but I'm sure you'll think of more. Feel free to ask questions. If you enjoy multitasking, feel free to also tweet using the hashtag WinLoss. Okay, so today we're going to talk about the various roles in the organization that can be helped by win-loss data. Lots of different parts, not just sales, but sales operations, product marketing, product management, and development, and how this win-loss data helps each role be more successful. Our speakers today, Ken Allred, founded Primary Intelligence, a win-loss research consulting firm, and has 13 years experience doing win-loss analysis and managing a company that does win-loss analysis. And Steve Johnson, Chief Marketing Officer of Primary Intelligence, is an up-and-coming thought leader in the win-loss research space as well. And they also are good friends and will banter a little bit, so it should be a fun session. With that, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Ken and Steve. And take it away, guys, and let's learn a little more about the benefits of win-loss research.
All right, thanks, Barry. I appreciate it. This is Ken speaking, and I want to thank everyone for their time today. Really looking forward to walking through the content that we have planned for you today. And as Barry said, as we go through, if you have questions, don't hesitate to throw those questions out. And both Barry and Steve are watching those questions so that we can get those answered in a timely manner. And then, of course, at the end, we can also have kind of a Q&A session if there's anything that hasn't been wrapped up at that point. But I'm very excited to be here today. I hope everyone is as well. And looking forward to walking through this with you. Steve, before I jump in, is there anything that you wanted to add here at this point?
Just a few things. A lot of times people ask, will there be a recording of this after the fact, which there will, and will there be copies of slides available, which there will as well. So we'll post that up on our website as we go along. I've been involved with win-loss analysis officially since earlier this year, but I have been doing win-loss as part of my job over the last decade or so. And so I'm really passionate about what people in sales, but also outside of sales, can learn about win-loss. So that's what we'll be talking about today. Take it, Ken.
All right, very good. Thanks, Steve. Well, to get us started, I thought I've got a couple of polls. Those are always fun to do. That I'd like to run past the group here, kind of see what kind of mix we've got. So I'm going to go ahead and launch just a couple of these questions for you. We'll go ahead and launch this one. So you can see that this first question is really about whether or not you have a current win-loss program in place. And this will give us a sense for what the mix of the audience is that we're presenting to today. And let's see. I think there's a way for, I think hopefully everybody's had an opportunity to vote here. I believe I can close this, and then I can actually share the results. with everyone so you can kind of see where the mix is, and that gives us a good sense for people's experience with win-loss as we go through this. I've got another question. It looks like we've got a good percentage of the folks that are doing win-loss, or at least doing it somewhat, maybe doing it inconsistently here. But I want to find out, who do you collect your win-loss data from? There are two primary sources. One is from your buyers, one is from your sales reps, and I want to see for those that have win-loss programs in place. Let's see where you're primarily collecting your intelligence. Okay, I think everybody's hopefully had an opportunity to complete that. Go ahead and share the results with everyone. So
good.
That's good. Yeah, that's great. I'm glad to see that that we're seeing that. So there's definitely there'll be some interesting content in here, especially for folks that are just collecting win-loss data for sales reps, as we go through that today. So one other question. Actually, I've got two more to run past the group here. And this one is really to get an understanding. So there's some content in here that is specific for that are really the administrators of their win-loss programs in their organization. So I want to get a sense for how many of you are either are an administrator for your win-loss program, or have got a maybe option in there for those that maybe aren't doing win-loss right now but have plans so they may become the administrator. That's what that maybe option is there for. Give you a sense there. So let's go ahead and close that one up. We'll share the results. So we do have quite a few folks on the call today that are administrators of your win-loss program, which is fantastic. I'm glad to see that. And for those that aren't, hopefully if your organization is doing win-loss, you know who that administrator is, and I think it'd be worthwhile to share this webinar, the recorded version of this webinar, with them at a later time. So last question. This is an important one. The question is, which of the following roles have access to win-loss data in your organization? Obviously, this is the topic of our webinar today, and I'd like to get a sense for, which of these roles have access to the win-loss data for those organizations that are doing win-loss. Oh, pretty interesting. So it's actually better than I expected, which is fantastic. I'll go ahead and let's give everybody a chance to vote here. Go ahead and close that up. We'll share that. Share the results there.
Great. So
very interesting, and actually very encouraging to me, because in the past. We've seen much lower percentages, especially in specific areas. So it's very good to see that. I think that's a fantastic trend we're seeing here. Okay. All right. Well, that takes care of just some, helping us get an understanding of who we're speaking to today, and some of the items that I think you guys will be most interested in as we go through this. I want to start off by an analogy. It's actually an analogy that one of our sales reps came up with, which I think is fantastic. And it's ironic in a number of ways, but high school football teams are actually spending more money on win-loss analysis than the Fortune 1000 on a relative basis. So digest that for a second. High school football teams spend more money on win-loss than the Fortune 1000 do on a relative basis. In fact, every high school football team at the very least reviews the tape from their football games to identify areas that they can improve in. And it's when you start to look at things in that light, it's kind of crazy that the Fortune 1000 aren't approaching their wins and losses in a very similar way. In fact, we know that only about 40% of companies are analyzing why they win and lose in sales situations. And of those companies that analyze why they win and lose, only about half of them are asking half of them are asking the sales rep why they won or lost the deal, and then relying on that data alone to make decisions, which, which is a big mistake and a missed opportunity. In fact, I did a blog post on what I referred to as buyer-derived versus seller-derived or sales-derived win-loss analysis, and that blog post actually goes into great detail using some real-world examples that may be of interest to you on this call, especially those organizations that currently are only getting win-loss data from your sales reps. You can actually find that blog post on our site, primary-intel.com. Click on the executive blog link at the top, and then if you do a quick search for the word buyer-derived or sales-derived, that blog post will come up for you. So we're also finding that only a small percentage of organizations that actually do win-loss are consistent in their efforts, and we actually saw that in the poll that we did earlier as well. So it's tough to be consistent, or it can be challenging to be consistent in keeping your win-loss program moving forward. In fact, it's very common to see organizations analyze deals of interest when they happen. So very large deal that you won or lost, you want to do an analysis on that. But it ends up being very inconsistent. Or perhaps you just do a couple 1 month, and then you get busy, months pass, and you realize, oh, we need to do some more. So it's very inconsistent, kind of start and stop. In the end, only about 1 in 100 companies are actually doing win-loss analysis correctly. And by correctly, I mean maximizing the value that can come from a win-loss program. And so why should this matter to you? Because if you can implement a win-loss program correctly, you and your organization can create a very serious competitive advantage for yourselves in the marketplace, an advantage that can pay very, very well. And so let's look at, what are the characteristics of a properly implemented win-loss analysis program? So first of all, we ask the question, what is win-loss analysis? So after more than 13 years, we've learned that win-loss is primarily a decision support tool and a problem detection tool. So each win-loss that is analyzed will uncover, in our experience, an average of 8 to 10 specific action items that can be taken across the organization to improve performance. And so after implementing, after implementing thousands of win-loss programs over the years and interviews with tens of thousands of buyers, we actually created a process and methodology for correctly implementing a win-loss program so that our customers can achieve the maximum value and return on their investments in this important function. And we call this methodology our buyer voice framework. You've got a graphic up here that you're looking at right now, which is that buyer voice framework. And so it all starts with the voice of the buyer. Implementing the program, having and capturing the discussions with buyers, analyzing the intelligence that is gathered in those discussions, and then disseminating that intelligence and analysis so that people in the organization can take action. And that's of real importance, which you can see on the right-hand side of this graph. It's all about action. So you've got this process to gather that win-loss data. In the end, the most important thing is it's all about action. It's taking action and driving results as from that data that you've collected. So there are really what I would define as 9 key characteristics of a win-loss program that has been implemented correctly. And these are based on our experience the last decade plus working with hundreds of customers to implement and execute their win programs. So the first characteristic is that it's buyer-derived. So collecting that intelligence from the sales rep as well is a good thing. That's a best practice. But at the very minimum, it needs to be, your win-loss program needs to be gathering that data from your buyers. The next item is you need to be analyzing the drivers of decisions, so the key things that drive decisions. In fact, we'll end up doing a webinar on this specific topic alone, because there's a lot to cover here. I won't cover it today, but it's important that when you have those discussions with the buyers, that you are measuring and analyzing all of the things that potentially can impact the decision and ultimately the outcome of a decision. It's important that when you're doing this, you're gathering both quantitative data and qualitative data. Quantitative data by itself, they rated you a 6 in this. By itself, it's tough to take action on that type of data. But when you have quantitative plus qualitative, or the context around that, you can absolutely take action on that and drive some real change, real positive results. So it's very important that you're gathering both quantitative and qualitative as part of your win-loss program. You need to make sure that your sample is representative. It's very important that it's natural to cherry pick. It's very natural, and it's okay to a certain extent. In other words, your biggest deals, big loss, you obviously want to do a loss analysis on that. Big win, you obviously want to do an analysis on a big win. But it's important that you limit that cherry picking to a certain extent so that you can get a representative sample, so that as you get enough data points, you can start to look at trends and know that because you've got a representative sample, you can rely on the trend numbers that are coming back for you and your organization. You need to make sure that your program is consistent. It's ongoing. The stop, you can still get benefits from that, but when you start and stop, you're missing out on a lot of opportunity. You're missing out. Each time you start, you get that momentum going, and people start using that win-loss data. When you stop that whole process, and it needs to start over again. So it's better to get it up going and keep consistent with it. This is critical. You need sales leadership support for your win-loss program. It's critical. If you don't have sales leadership's buy-in, it will be very difficult for you to do win-loss analysis, period. And we'll talk about ways that you can get sales leadership on board today when we talk about the sales leadership role specifically. You also need your sales representative support. This is every bit as critical. If your sales reps don't support the program, it'll be very difficult for you to have your program and have it run successfully. You also need to establish what I call a culture of learning versus blame assessment. And this is a very important aspect of, or characteristic rather, of win-loss programs that are being done correctly. If you establish a culture where the win-loss data is used to punish or to assess blame, nothing will kill your program faster than if the data is used in that way. Instead, your company as a whole needs to adopt a culture of let's learn from this, because win-loss is going to uncover some ugly things, and there's going to be some stuff that comes out of that's going to make you cringe. And you need to be in a position where you accept that mistakes happen, you embrace them, and you learn from that. And there's just so many benefits that come from that, because when you do that, you can correct those mistakes. People can learn from those mistakes, and then those mistakes, the likelihood of them being repeated in the future goes way down. However, if you've got a culture of blame assessment and let's punish people when they make mistakes, then the likelihood is those mistakes will be hidden, and they'll be repeated. They'll cost you deals in the future. Finally, and this is the topic of this webinar, all of the key roles in your organization need to have access to the data. Access is the first step. It's also helping them, teaching them, training them on how to use the data. That's the second step, and every bit as important. And we'll talk a little bit about that today as we go through. So keep in mind that one of the biggest barriers that we have seen for win-loss programs to recognize their full value for our customers is whether or not all of the key roles in the organization have access to the data. So, many organizations believe that they have valid reasons for not sharing the data with everyone, or sharing data with only a select few people. And a lot of times they've got good reasons, what they believe are good reasons for these things. I can tell you that in 13 years of experience in doing this and working with hundreds of customers over the years, I've yet to hear a reason that would outweigh the benefits and value that your organization will get if you adopt open access to your win-loss data for all of the key roles. That's my experience, and it's one that I want to share because I want everyone who implements win-loss programs to get the maximum value that they can from them, because they can be such a tremendous tool, for positive change. So let's see. Actually, I've already covered that.
The good news, Ken,
Yeah.
is that in the poll we took at the beginning of this webinar, as I recall, 75% plus were sharing that information with the key areas that we're talking about here.
Yes, in fact, I was very excited about that. In fact, it's a very good thing to see because it means that we're taking the right steps when it comes to those programs. So I need to pause between my slides and ask if there are any questions. Feel free to throw the questions in too as I'm going, and then I'll pause at the end of each slide. And if we have any questions, I can address them at that point so that the context is right for any of those questions. I don't see any questions so far, so I'll just continue. So let's talk about the key roles that need to have access to your win-loss data. So we define these key roles, and this is by no means an exclusive list, or inclusive list rather. So the primary roles that we want to look at and we want to make sure or ensure within your organization that these roles have access to the data include product management, product marketing, competitive intelligence, sales leaders, your sales reps, sales support, and executives. And I recognize that every organization potentially calls these roles different things, but for the sake of our webinar today, hopefully everybody kind of understands the rule set or the responsibilities that each of these roles have, and then what we'll be covering are the benefits that each of these roles can experience and should experience from your win-loss program. So when all of these roles have access to the data and know how to use the data, the value and ROI that you can experience from your investment will be exponential. I know I've said that a couple of times, and I want to keep reiterating that. So today, as we walk through this, we'll cover those benefits that you should be getting from your win-loss programs. So we have a question here. So which department typically conducts win-loss from your experience? Our organization, marketing, facilities, and or facilitates and distributes, rather. So it's actually, we see, it's been a couple of years since we've analyzed this, but we see a big percentage of marketing taking on the administrative role for win-loss. We also see sales support. So marketing is probably by and large they have the greatest share of fulfilling that administrator role. Then sales or sales support, and then finally product management. And those are the three areas there. Great question, Jonathan.
And when we use the term administrator, we mean the champion as much as anything.
That's right.
The person who makes sure the process keeps going, but also shares the information with others. I just find the word administrator a little dicey sometimes.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that, Steve, because you're absolutely correct.
Systems administrator is a geeky role.
That's right. That's exactly right. So win-loss program manager, administrator, guy in charge of the win-loss program. I mean, this is, when I use the term administrator, that's what I'm referring to today. And so, in fact, the role that you didn't see on the previous slide was that win-loss program administrator. And when it comes to your win-loss program, this is the most important role, period. Because in order for all of those other roles that we've talked about to realize the benefits of your win-loss program, we need to talk, the win-loss program administrator is directly responsible for the success or failure, as the case may be, of of those roles being able to take advantage of the win-loss data. And so when you look at the key responsibilities for the win-loss administrator, they include, being able to obviously facilitate and manage the program, which includes things like gathering sample. So when we say sample, those are your wins and losses. Managing the process. So you might be doing this internally, and that means that you're managing a process that you've defined internally to gather the win-loss data. That's part of the administrator's role. If you're outsourcing this, it means managing and working with the vendor that you're working with, to whom you've outsourced your win-loss program. But one of the most important aspects or responsibilities for the win-loss administrator is to make sure that all roles have access to that data. They can't use it if they can't get to it when they need it. And that's an important responsibility. Sometimes we get so focused on gathering the data and working with the sample and getting that all put together that the last step in the process can sometimes get neglected based on what we've seen. And that's definitely something that you don't want to have happen. So access is real critical. In fact, that's why we've invested so much as a company and continue to invest in our software tools. Because we recognized early on that that sharing win-loss data via PDFs or Word documents or Excel files was very cumbersome, and that our customers needed tools that would give them real-time access to the data and allow them to do all kinds of things that you can't do with a Word doc or a PDF, or like a central document repository. Because sharing that key intelligence is critical. In fact, that's one of the other parts of responsibilities is being able to share that key intelligence with stakeholders as you uncover it in the program. That real-time feed is critical for stakeholders. It's critical for their continued support of the program, their continued buy-in. You need to be feeding them with intelligence that helps them make their decisions and make their jobs easier. And then, of course, I've mentioned this, but one of the most important aspects of the administrator's job is to teach and train those key roles on how to access and use the win-loss data. That can't be emphasized enough. It needs to be an ongoing effort with regular refreshers. And those refreshers, you can consider those like reminders that the win-loss data is there and it's there to help them. So let's do we have any questions at this point? I don't see any. So, so let me continue to the next slide. And so the first role that I wanted to talk about today was the sales leadership role. Because I mentioned earlier on that it's so important that your sales leadership is on board, that they support your program. Without that support, it can be very difficult, to keep a win-loss program going. And I think it's important to understand kind of the profile of a sales leader. One of the things that I don't think you may not be aware of is that the average tenure for a VP of sales is so short, 18 to 24 months, which causes an intense amount of pressure upon them, in terms of they got to hit their numbers. That's where their primary interest is, hitting those monthly, quarterly, and yearly sales objectives. The irony here is that the sales leader has the fewest tools with which to achieve their objectives. It's just crazy to me. You go to like development, product management, marketing, and you look at the slew of tools available to those roles to do and fulfill their responsibilities, and then compare that with the sales leader, and they just have so few tools with which to, arguably do one of the more difficult tasks in an organization, which, keep that revenue engine going. So it's important that you recognize this about your sales leadership. They can be one of the more challenging stakeholders to get buy-in from, because win-loss analysis can be threatening, to a sales leader. Having said that, when you have your sales leadership support, they can have the most positive or the biggest positive impact on the success of your win-loss program. So you need the sales leader to be on board and completely supportive of the win-loss program. And your only way you're going to be able to do that is if you can show them that the program will help them achieve their objectives. So let's look at the benefits that that a sales leader can. In fact, I need to speed up a little bit. I'm going a little slow here. So benefits for sales leadership. Win-loss analysis is, by and large, the best coaching tool a sales leader has, and it is by far the most underutilized tool in the sales leader's tool belt, especially, obviously, for companies who are doing win-loss. One of my primary missions is to get our customer sales leaders to leverage win-loss as a coaching tool more because of the amazing impact it can have on helping them help their sales reps. The other thing that win-loss analysis does better than any other tool is help a sales leader identify risks and weaknesses in their current sales processes. In fact, a VP of sales for a software company recently shared this quote with us. We've heard feedback that our products look more difficult to use compared to our primary competitor. This is not the case, but this was the perception based on our demos. This was a total surprise to us, and we changed our demo approach. Now we go on site 2 to 3 weeks prior to the demo. We see and understand their business process and tailor our demo to that specific hospital and their issues. This process change has made a huge difference in their results, and it was a weakness they may not have learned about a long time if it weren't for their win-loss program and the fact that the sales leader had access to the win-loss program's data and knew what to do with it. So let's look at the sales representative, another person we need on board for a win-loss program to be successful. Some things you need to understand about sales reps. There's high turnover on your sales team. I'm sure many of you have probably seen this. In fact, estimates put it at about 20%, where you've got 10% voluntary, 10% involuntary. Sales representatives tend to be very short-term focused. Sometimes you'll hear the word coin-operated because it's a similar role to that sales leadership position. There's intense pressure for them to hit their numbers. In order for a sales rep to succeed, they need to understand your product, your company, your competitors' products, your buyers' needs, your buyers' industries, and your sales process. So all of these, and to make things even more difficult, all of these things are in a constant state of motion. So when you think about it, sales can be one of the most challenging roles in your organization. And sales reps will likely be the most apprehensive when you first introduce your win-loss program. In fact, you'll hear things like, I don't want you talking to my buyer because I'm still working with them, or a whole number of excuses or reasons. However, if you establish a culture of learning and you share the win-loss data with sales reps, they will become your biggest program supporters. In fact, this was a couple of years ago, but I received an email from a sales rep. I just want to read just a quick excerpt from this to you. But in this email, he says, "Hi, Ken. I recently read an opportunity profile from Primary Intelligence on a $2 million a year RFP where I was directly involved. And I had some of the same emotions chronicled in your Losing Can Facilitate Winning blog post. With over 20 years of business experience, the last 108 months of which I have carried a sales quota, you would think my skin would be as thick as an alligator's, and maybe it is. But I have to ask myself, then why did I pause prior to reading the profile? The answer is clear. This intelligence was new to me, and it wasn't something I or anyone else could control or mitigate. It was real, and it was about to become public to my biggest critic. It also compelled me to think of the value. How many other multi-million-dollar domestic and global RFPs could I win if I had a better understanding of the people and process? Your company has a strong value prop. Thank you for all you do." So you can see here that the rep very quickly was able to recognize the value of the profile and how they could use it to improve their sales skills. This is the same thing you should expect from your sales reps when you give them access to the data, and also when you help them understand how to use it. Okay.
And as we've seen, certainly the sales reps also really respond well to quotes from customers as opposed to statistics perhaps from product marketing or product development. That is, this buyer said this thing as opposed to 78% of our customers report the other thing. There's an emotion in quotes and verbatims that really resonates with salespeople.
No, that's absolutely correct. In fact, I would argue that win-loss is the absolute best tool for driving positive change at the sales rep level. In fact, I can remember a very specific situation with one of our own sales reps. We had a number of conversations with him about making sure to really listen to buyers, because we'd had other folks internally who had participated in sales calls with this sales rep notice that there were times where it appeared that he wasn't listening and was maybe doing too much talking. Had a number of conversations with him, but the challenge here was that the rep was a fantastic rep. Blowing out the numbers, closing deals right and left. So great rep, very confident in his own abilities to sell, which is what we wanted. So the conversations weren't really heard, is probably how I would say that. I don't think it wasn't that he wasn't open to the feedback. The problem was more that the feedback was coming from internal people. And it wasn't until he had 2 losses in a row where both buyers specifically mentioned that he wasn't listening to their needs. Now, with those 2 data points in hand, I was able to work with the rep to show him that this was an area of weakness and it was costing him money. And it was an overnight change. We immediately saw that change in his approach, and he began investing a lot more time and effort into really trying to listen. So when I say that win-loss data is the best tool for driving the kinds of change you want, I really mean it. It's because it comes from buyers, and sales reps will pay attention to what buyers say every time. Okay, so just a few stats here that I wanted to share that are kind of applicable to how win-loss can impact the performance of your sales representatives. And they can have a very dramatic impact here. So these stats actually come from 2 studies. One is done by the Corporate Executive Board, and the other is by CSO Insights. But the key stat that really stood out to me was that last one from the Corporate Executive Board. So according to them, the best performing sales reps are spending significantly more time analyzing their wins and losses than their peers. And the interesting thing here is that we see the same thing in our own customers. We see similar, very dramatic results with our own customers who share win-loss data with their sales reps, and then those sales reps leverage that data and use that data. So let's shift now to benefits for sales support and operations. So typically in sales support or sales operations, these functions can have very different responsibilities. I just want to focus on a couple of areas here. One is that win-loss analysis is the best tool for identifying customer references and what I would call competitor anti-references for your sales organization. In fact, I've got kind of a funny story. Last year, my wife had been shopping to replace some windows in our home. She saw an advertisement and had the sales rep for that company come out and do a demonstration of their product. So she had looked at this company, and there was one other company she was considering. And these were the only companies that she was going to look at and had planned to look at. However, the sales rep that came out for the first company brought up a specific competitor that my wife hadn't considered, and brought that competitor up numerous times during the demonstration, and numerous times with follow-up calls with my wife, to the point that she said in disgust, she made the comment to me that she was going to make sure that she evaluated that competitor that this sales rep was bashing on, because he'd basically been bad-mouthing them so much. And this was a competitor that she wasn't even considering. So Sales 101 says you can never talk about the competition, as it'll backfire more often than not. However, if you are competing with a particular competitor and you can provide customer references where they selected you over that competitor, you can dramatically improve your probability of winning those deals, because those customer references can tell the deal that you're trying to win why they selected you over the competition, and that's powerful. One of the other benefits that we see our clients get, this is a little less common, is uncovering what we call competitor anti-references. So these are losses for our customers. And so these are buyers that selected the competition, but as we go in and we do the analysis with them, we find out that they're not happy with the competitor for numerous reasons. Those are then what we would call anti-references for that competitor, and they can be great additional tools for your sales reps as they can direct prospects they're working with to contact those anti-references and get the anti-references experienced with that competitor.
And you can only really maintain a list of these anti-references if somebody in your organization is staying in touch with losses. And I think a lot of times we say, oh, shoot, we lost the business, let's move on. But it certainly is powerful when you know that, gosh, we failed to win a deal at company X, and yet we talked to them 3 months later, and they're questioning their decision, and they're really struggling with the implementation. That's a great reference to share with your sales team when they encounter that competitor.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah. Well, let's shift gears to competitive intelligence. In fact, this one's near my heart. Competitive intelligence, my background's in sales, and so I remember days where I was looking for competitive intelligence to help me compete more effectively with the competitors I was competing in when I was selling enterprise software systems. Competitive intelligence is traditionally scraping websites and press releases. And I can tell you as a sales rep, that didn't do me a lot of good. Nothing that I could really take, create tactics or strategy around to help me beat a competitor. But win-loss-based competitive intelligence is buyer-based, and it's infinitely more actionable for every role in your organization that can leverage competitive intelligence. In fact, early on in our history, we uncovered some very important competitive intelligence from a couple of our losses. In fact, when we were first founded, we built a company based on a very traditional business structure. At that time, our consultants were primarily project managers who worked with our customers and managed internal resources to achieve those objectives of our clients' win-loss programs. And so we had internal resources organized around specific business activities. So we had a call center that was responsible for doing the interviews, transcriptionists, editors, analysts, etc. However, we had competitors back then, in fact, even similar to today, that tended to be small, 1 or 2 person type consultant shops, and our relatively larger size and structure we found could actually end up working against us, the way that our competitors were positioning us with our buyers. In fact, a couple of losses to competitors where the buyer indicated that our competitors were telling them that we use call centers to collect our win-loss data, where they were the ones that would actually be doing the calls. And so when this data came back, it caused me to really rethink our approach and structure. Our competitors were right in this case, and this was an area of weakness for us. And so we were effectively asking what could be the lowest paid person on our team to do the most important task, which was interview the buyer. So we quickly changed our process as a result so that our consultant, the highest paid person, the most senior member of the team, was the person doing the interviews. And what a fantastic change. I mean, this elevated the quality of our product immediately and has provided immense value for our customers going forward. The irony here is that our competitors actually continued to try to use the fact that primary intelligence uses call centers as a weakness against us for years to come. And our sales reps loved it every time they did, because it was a weakness that we had we'd already resolved and strengthened our position any time when we were talking to customers about it. So let me just reiterate. Win-loss analysis is the absolute best source of actionable competitive intelligence. Okay. So product marketing. So this is an area that, a few years ago, we helped our sales organization gain a deeper understanding of our different buyer types by creating specific buyer personas based on our win-loss data for each of our buyer types. And this was a huge success in helping our sales reps understand the different needs of each of our different buyers. It really helped them be able to change their conversations with those buyers based on what they now knew about that buyer and what would be important to them. And this was a huge improvement for us in our sales process and in our marketing and collateral that we used even. I'm actually going to skip a few things here just to keep us within time.
Well, let me say on this slide, the voice of the buyer is just so critical to all of the product marketing that you do. It helps you create messages that resonate with the customers rather than the techno jargon that we tend to get from a lot of product managers. And our friend Adele Ravella focuses on win-loss as her primary form of research to empower product marketing people with defining their buyer personas, and she does that at buyerpersona.com.
Yep, exactly. Okay. All right. So product management. So when we look at the benefits for product management, win-loss analysis, it's an amazing source of intelligence for product managers, really in almost every area that would matter to them. To use I was faced with a challenge of meeting our customers' rising service level needs, and whether or not I could raise our prices to accommodate those requests. If it wasn't for our win-loss program, I'd be in the dark on this one. But our win-loss analysis program allowed me to see the impact pricing was really having on decisions to choose us and our solution. And then I could weigh the importance of the feature enhancements that customers were requesting and asking for with the potential negative impact of an increase in pricing. And it allowed me to make a decision that ultimately provided more value for our customers. And without that win-loss data, I would have been very much in the dark. The win-loss analysis for product managers, it will uncover missing features in your solution right and left. And these will be features that if implemented, will have an impact on future decisions, future outcomes. They'll help you continue to win more business in the future.
And look at your example from just a moment ago. Not only did it impact decisions on pricing, but going from a less expensive call center sort of approach to a relatively more expensive expert researcher approach was a weakness in an offering that would have been, I suppose, hard to justify. How do I justify to my management that I need to double the cost of the analysis team? And the answer is, look, 42% of our losses are attributed to this one thing.
Yep, that's exactly right.
And there's so many cases in the world of product management where we're having to choose between, do we do this feature or that feature, or how far do we take such a feature? Do we go minimum viable, or do we go full tilt? And we've got to make those decisions with facts. Otherwise, we go to our leadership and say, okay, hey, I want to double the cost of the product next development next quarter, and they're like, holy moly, show me some more than your opinion on that before I can justify the increasing expenditure.
Yeah. No, win-loss is a fantastic tool in helping you understand the importance of what you have on your product roadmap and whether or not you're focusing on things that really might have less impact on decisions and can help you reprioritize when needed.
Agreed.
So let's look at the benefits for executives. And a key thing here is that your executives will be most interested in trends. But the thing you need to understand is that executives have to make decisions all the time on little to no data. And so you've got a real opportunity here to feed your executives with intelligence from your win-loss program, especially if you know what's top of mind for them. What are the issues or concerns that they have? In fact, there was an executive from one of our clients recently that posted the following blog post. And I love, so this is an executive's point of view. And he made this blog post kind of tongue-in-cheek in some of the comments here that you'll pick up on. But I just take an excerpt here that I think you'd be interested in. But we began doing win-loss reporting several months ago. Instead of doing it half-assed, we hired a superb firm, Primary Intelligence, a little endorsement there, guys. And the amount of detail, the dashboarding, the insightful questioning is beyond anything that I had envisioned. Of course, I am very pleased with the win reports. I find them poetic and ripe for rereading, as do all of our customers, and we do too. But the losses are something else entirely. How could they not understand, or how could we explain so poorly? How can one customer think we have the broadest capability and the next kick us out before the finals? How come this and how come that? Sports teams now do win-loss on a play-by-play basis. In football, they even break down practices this way. Now business is following suit. And once you know that such tools exist, how can you not deploy them? Still, the loss reports stick with me far longer than the wins. The pain of the most recent one led to this block. So my advice, and I love this, so my advice to all my competitors is don't do win-loss reporting. It's too aggravating. So here's an executive, at a large technology firm talking about the impact that their win-loss program is having on him personally. And obviously, now there's a lot more there, but the win-loss data is, those individual reports are things that are helping him, giving him a broader understanding in the key areas that he needs, not just the trends. Although you'll still find that your executives will be very focused on trends, you need to help them, get them that real-time feed of intelligence at the deal level, because it'll help them. Ken?
When I talk to executives, one of my opening questions really is can you tell me why you win and why you lose? And I can't tell you the number of times their response has been some variant on, I know what my people tell me, but I don't believe it. There's so much conjecture and, imagining, and they have so little, concrete data to work with. And if they come out of a data sort of a background, if your executives are former developers or finance people, they really like making decisions with hard data, and yet so many companies are blind when they try to make decisions unless they're doing some form of win-loss.
That's great. Great comment. So let's, in closing here as we wrap up, just the last couple of slides, let's focus again on the responsibilities of what I consider to be the most important person for your win-loss program, and that's the administrator. So the fastest way to adoption is ensuring that all of the key roles in your organization, all of the key roles we've discussed today, have access to the data, and you're providing support to them on how to use or leverage that data. So probably the most important of the responsibilities that I've shown is in working with stakeholders, especially the sales leader stakeholders like we talked about. You need to be in regular communication with your stakeholders so that you understand what's top of mind for them. You got to understand what's keeping them up at night. What are they most concerned about? If you know the answers to these questions and you can consistently feed them that key win-loss data that's relevant to those items, that will help them make better decisions, achieve their objectives, and ultimately you'll get their complete support for the program because you're giving them intelligence that's helping them. So there can be a lot of potential time and effort expended on meeting these responsibilities. So the question then becomes, is it worth the effort? And I can tell you that based on what I've seen working with hundreds of clients over the last decade, it is worth every minute of effort spent, and it will pay huge dividends for you, your career, and your company. The benefits we've seen win-loss administrators realize when they manage the win-loss programs openly, so sharing the data with all the key roles and helping those roles leverage that data, include having key relationships with executives at every level in the company, gaining access to these same executives and what they're working on, what they're concerned with. You'll develop a deep understanding of your product, your sales process, your marketing, your competitors, their products. You'll become an expert like no one else in the organization, and there will be tremendous personal value for you in achieving this level of expertise. So the benefits far outweigh the challenges that you'll encounter as you endeavor to implement and execute a win-loss program in your organization if done correctly. So make sure that your win-loss program has or will have all of those characteristics that we've discussed today. The kind of program that will pay huge dividends for everyone. The kind of program that will generate the benefits we've looked at today. In fact, when we ask our clients, so we measure certain benefits and we ask them, have you experienced this benefit? And it's interesting. The results are very interesting to me because they cause me to dive deeper because they don't make sense to me. Every single one of our customers should be experiencing every single one of these benefits and, of course, all of the others that we've talked about today. And the results force me to ask the question, so what's the difference? Why do we have some clients who experience all or the majority of these benefits and others who only experience a handful of them? And the key missing element for our clients that weren't experiencing all of these benefits was whether or not all of the key roles had access to the intelligence and that's the big and, knew how to use it. So it's one thing to have access, it's another to know how to use it. But both of those two things need to be present. And in cases where a client was giving limited access, the benefits experienced were limited, which makes sense, right? And in cases where the client was pushing open access and working to make sure that all roles were using the data, these clients experience most, if not all, of the benefits listed here. So the take-home message for us today is that the ROI you will realize on win-loss analysis efforts is directly tied to the number of people that have access to the data and know how to use it.
Transparency is a wonderful thing.
It is. So, just in closing here, we do this for a living. We develop buyer voice from our experiences and the thousands of interviews that we've done with our clients. And if you'd like help explaining the value of win-loss to your organization, we've got a free ebook you can see here. You can download that. If you'd like help with other types of win-loss questions, don't hesitate to get in touch with us. There are also quite a few blog posts on win-loss analysis, like the one I mentioned earlier, that you can find on our site blog, as well. And with that, I believe I'm wrapping up, and I think I did it on time.
Indeed. Our next webinar is going to be with Jim Geisman, who's the founder of Software Pricing Partners. And Jim and I are going to talk together about how win-loss analysis gives us insight on pricing, very much as how Ken illustrated it a moment ago. When you're making pricing decisions blind, you're just guessing. But there are some really powerful things you can learn through win-loss analysis about comparing pricing to value, comparing it to your competitors, and really understanding why people make the decisions they do from win-loss. And so Jim and I are going to talk about that on Wednesday, November 28th, and that's going to be at noon again, and you can register at the URL shown on the screen. Go to primary.intel.com/webinars, and there's a click there for Buyer Voice Webinar Series, and you can register for our next seminar at that URL. So thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Ken, for walking us through all of the different roles that could be and should be affected by the results that we get from win-loss analysis. And I